I'd like to call to order this public hearing. This public hearing is being held pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act. All members of the public will be given a reasonable time to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. All information, correspondence, petitions, or reports that have been received by noon today concerning the subject bylaw have been circulated to council and are available to the public as part of the meeting package. Staff will provide their report, followed by an opportunity for the applicant to speak. Members of the public who have pre-registered to speak have been added to the speakers list in the order that requests were received. Those pre-registered will be provided the opportunity for public comment according to the order of the speakers list, followed by comment from those who have not pre-registered. Anyone who has not pre-registered can still attend council chambers and wait to speak following those on the speakers list, or alternatively can electronically participate by calling the conference line during the live hearing at 778-907-2071 and entering meeting ID 506-489-9374 and passcode 485186. Speakers will be asked to state their name and civic address. Please note that all representations, whether written, verbal, or electronic, are available to the public for viewing as part of the public record. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker and should include all the relevant information in their presentation. Further opportunity will be afforded to all members of the public to speak a second or third time with new information only once all persons have had an opportunity to speak. Council may ask questions of staff, the applicant, and the public, but once the public hearing is over, no new information can be received. Council debate on the bylaw will take place during the regular council meeting following the conclusion of the public hearing. At that time, any questions of staff will be for clarification purposes only. The corporate officer will now provide information on the notice of this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So notice of the public hearing was given by posting on the notice board at Municipal Hall and on the district's website, as well as advertising in the Summerland Review issues of March 28th and April 4th, 2024. In addition, 20 notices were mailed to owners and occupiers of surrounding properties on March 20th, 24. And the district has received 4 written submissions with regards to this application, all in opposition.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dulvit, would you like to introduce the topic? Oh, Ms. Tooney, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. This evening's application for the public hearing is an official community plan and a zoning amendment at 10919 Ward Street. As indicated here, the subject property is currently designated low-density residential intensification, and the application wishes to change to the low-density residential designation. To allow this project to proceed, the property requires to be rezoned to our duplex housing zone. This map depicts the district's urban growth boundary as it stands today. Within these areas, the goal is to provide infill development, differing ranges of housing choice, and create complete communities. This is a rendering of the proposed development, with 2 duplexes being placed on the lot and subdivided into 2 separate parcels. Although rezoning to duplex housing allows the project to proceed, the applicant requires 3 site-specific requests to fulfill the design on the lot of this size. They wish to reduce the minimum lot area, the width, and the rear setbacks. On this site plan, the green outlined area indicates the front garden space. This was adapted to break up the parking frontage and to soften the landscape. As today's bylaw stands, this project requires 2 parking stalls per unit, and so 8 are needed here. If adopted, the amendments to our current driveway access bylaw would allow this configuration of parking, both as a subdivided lot or left as one. This is further renderings of the building from the front and also from the side. As you can see from this site plan, the two units have been stepped back from each other. This is to reduce massing and giving a differing viewpoint of outdoor space to the occupants and shadowing. To put this development in perspective, although the district has not yet adopted the new zoning bylaw changes brought on by Bill 44, it is expected that this proposal will be a typical type of development allowed within the low-density residential designation within Summerland. So to summarise, the applicant has developed several properties within Summerland that are similar site-specific zone amendments, which have came out successfully within our low-density neighbourhoods, like the proposed location. Infill is encouraged in this actual neighbourhood as it has full district services. It's within 5 minutes walk to downtown schools and our amenities. The housing stock in Summerland is predominantly single-family homes and would benefit from a variety of dwelling choices. Although the street is predominantly single-family homes, zoning and OCP amendment requests align with the new Bill 44 legislative changes enacted by our BC government. Development also aligns with the proposed future bylaws that we are soon to adopt. With that, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present and want to speak?
To the mayor, unfortunately, the developer is actually not very well and sends his apologies.
Okay, no problem. So now I'll ask the public to speak. First, I have one person registered, Neil Andrews. Yep. Go ahead, sir. Just come at the podium and push the button, and you have 2 minutes. 5 minutes. Next one's 2 minutes.
Mayor and Council, I'm Neil Andrews. I live at 10920 Ward Street, directly across from 10919 Ward Street, the subject property. On February 27, 2024, I, along with 9 neighbors, attended an information open house held by the developer concerning his proposal to build 2 duplex buildings at 10919 Ward Street for a total of 4 dwelling units. The written invitation to attend asked the question, "Are you in favor of affordable housing?" It continued, "So are we, and we are making an effort to help by proposing to build 4 affordably priced, family-oriented homes in our community, and specifically in your neighborhood." End of quote. All who attended told the developer we weren't in favor of his proposal. When asked what he planned to sell each dwelling unit for, his response was between $650,000 and $700,000. That isn't affordable housing for young families, considering the entire property sold for just under $600,000 in 2022. The property is a well-maintained 3-bedroom house on a level, fully landscaped 1/4 acre lot, complete with fenced backyard, perfect for children and pets. The developer rejected our suggestion to build a carriage house in the backyard. Should this proposed housing development be allowed to proceed, it will likely result in a sound house being bulldozed and carted off to a landfill at a time when we are being encouraged to reduce the amount of construction, renovation, and demolition debris going to landfills. At the provincial and federal levels, the government has stated there is an immediate requirement for housing in all jurisdictions. By knocking down the house at 10919 Ward Street, the developer will have removed another dwelling unit from Summerland's housing pool for up to 2 years until his development is ready for occupancy. Summerland should not be losing dwelling units in the short term. In the longer term, looking ahead 2 years plus, Summerland will have over 300 new dwelling units available for rent or purchase. Some of those being 60 rental units at the corner of Julia and Rosedale, 60 affordable rental units on the United Church property, approximately 60 units of affordable housing at the site of the former Legion Village, more than 100 townhome apartment units and cottage-style homes at the Summerland Eco Village, 40 townhomes on the former RCMP site, and 12 units of townhouses vicinity the Baptist Church. There is no need to densify the Ward Street area neighborhood. The Director of Development Services for Summerland is quoted in the March 14, 2024 Summerland Review newspaper saying, Main Street and Victoria Road North in the downtown core would have restricted density in order to maintain the small town charm of this area. Other parts of the community core would allow for increased density and multifamily housing, end of quote. I want Ward Street to maintain its small town charm as well. It is a long-established neighborhood that over the years has been described by real estate agents as one of Summerland's most desirable neighborhoods. The building of 4 dwelling units on a single lot should be restricted to the areas of Summerland that are classified as medium and high-density residential zones as per the proposed amendments to the OCP. I urge Mayor and Councillor that OCP Amendment Bylaw 2024-008 and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 2024-009 be denied and to instruct staff to recommend to the developer to keep the house at 10919 Ward Street in the housing pool by renting the house with the option of building a carriage house in the backyard to increase density. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, people, if we just hold your applause, it's, it's not within our decorum rules that are up on the wall there. If anybody else would like to speak, please come up to the podium. Just come up to the podium, sir.
Do we have to be registered?
No, anybody, just come up to the podium, state your name and civic address, and 5 minutes. Just push the button, yeah.
My name is Charlie Waynes Moran, and I live at 11105 Ward Street. I am directly beside this proposed property. I am not at all as well thought out as Neil is, but this proposed rezoning of our direct neighbor's property brings up multiple concerns for our family and other close neighbors. Trying to gain the trust of the neighborhood under the false pretense of affordable housing. Each individual unit alone will cost more than the current property was purchased at, as Neil had stated. Is the demand there for these types of duplexes? Are the current ones selling, especially with all of the proposed buildings coming, as Neil had said? The enormous structures are far beyond anything else in our immediate neighborhood. I've been a resident of Summerland for over 30 years, and living in this specific neighborhood has brought my family immense joy. Being able to step out into your backyard and chat with the neighbors through the fence while gardening is a humbling and comforting experience. The development of duplexes will eliminate this entirely. A carriage house would be more suitable for this. The size of these structures would cause significant impediment to our gardens and reduce with the reduced morning sun. The view that I wake up with every morning will be completely blocked with a giant building with windows facing into my yard where my young children play, our privacy also being affected. This is a small, quaint town, not a big city fit for building to building housing. Parking challenges already exist within the street. The proposed lot does not supply adequate parking for the amount of households being proposed. Some single families have 2 to 3 vehicles or more. Where are they to park? Our street is busy with children walking to and from school, as well as playing outside. This street is one of the most popular walking streets, with families, dogs, children, and elderly making daily visits to Ward Street. The increased vehicular traffic this development will bring will increase safety dangers for our youth and residing neighbors. This is not a suitable street or area for high or medium density housing. I think that rezoning of this lot is not ideal for any of us. I think that they are taking a beautiful property with a perfectly sized home, a great yard and garden, and are taking that away from a potential family to build for profit. And I think that that is the summary of what I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Please just come up to the podium.
My name is David Belsky. I live at 1116 Ward Street, 1106, sorry. And I live right next door to Neil. And this particular development would be kitty corner right in front of my house, which would be blocking my view of Giant's Head. And basically, you build something like this, it has no green space. And like you said, like Charlotte said, the parking would be just outrageous if they had too many vehicles. And I'd find him probably parking right in front of my house and stuff like that, not allowing me to have anybody come over and visit half the time. And basically, it's too tall for our neighborhood. If you just drive down Ward Street and just take a look at the view of it, all their basements are mostly built underground, and none of the houses are very tall at all. And like I say, it's been perfectly renovated just recently. I've been noticed they've been working on it. It is actually now 4 bedrooms. Now that I've counted it, now they've been working on it, and they built a new tub surround into and built a washer and dryer and a new sink in one of the rooms, and they have basically a family room built off the side. And in any case, it basically blocks all the views and all the green space of all the neighbors and such like that around the immediate area. So basically, it just doesn't suit Ward Street. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Yep, come up to the podium, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Byron Dolan. I live at 10915 Ward Street, which is immediately east of the subject property. And I agree with all the points made by my neighbors. However, I do think that it's beneficial for our community to replace one home with 4 homes in the downtown core. Likely tomorrow, they'll be announcing that we're closing Giant's Head School because of the fact that there's not as many families in Summerland as there used to be, which I think is a tragedy for the community. And while again, it will be inconvenient, you know, our gardens won't get as much sun, our family room won't get any sun in the afternoons. I still think it's a compromise that our community might have to make in order to make our community more affordable. And so again, I have a lot of respect for all my neighbors and I appreciate what they're saying, but we support the rezoning.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, please? Yep, just come to the podium.
Still push button. Oh, it's still on. My name is Heather Ross. I actually live on Grant Avenue, not on Ward. I just have a couple of questions, really. Whether Bill 44, which is going to be implemented shortly, I gather, addresses the issues of water runoff and the soil capacity when there is very little green space around homes. I'm concerned about this simply, maybe not in the immediate factor, but for the future, because I know a lot of places in Europe have trouble with flooding during monster rainstorms because they have nowhere for the water to go. So I'm just wondering if that's ever been a consideration in any conversations about development that's so dense in this kind of an area. I'm also having trouble with the proposed height, and I'm wondering if we have the capacity to restrict heights under the new bylaws. Because I know that in, for instance, my area, you would have to build that way because there is such a high water table, whereas on Ward Street, I don't believe the water table is an issue. And I'm asking some of these questions simply because my property could be on the line for being developed at some point. At this point, if I were to sell my house tomorrow, I wouldn't be able to afford to buy one of these proposed buildings, and I doubt if most other families would either. And I think it's why Summerland has not got enough children in the schools right now, because they simply can't afford to live here. This is not going to make that go away. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure questions on Bill 44 will come up in our discussion. Anybody else? Call a second time. Anyone like to speak?
Yeah.
Call a third time. Council, any questions? Anybody who's spoken or of staff? We can get clarification on things like Bill 44 when we discuss it during the meeting. Yep. Okay. I'll call it third and final time. Okay, I'll call this public hearing closed. So now I'd like to call to order the regular council evening meeting for Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Corporate officer, any late items? No late items. If I can get approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor? That carries. Consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda? No. If I get approval of the consent agenda, Councillor Peak, Councillor Trainer, all in favor? That carries. And now we'll go straight into the bylaw that we just heard from the public hearing. Council, any questions of staff? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. This is a question to Brad. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but Bill 44 is coming into play beginning of June. So if hypothetically, if this was to be denied, could the proponent come back after June 1st and what we're doing today would not happen? Am I correct in that assumption?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton. Yeah, if we were successful in adopting our changes to our zoning bylaw, which we have a timeline now put on us by the province of BC to complete those bylaw changes by June 30th. Then the developer came after the fact. Yes, they wouldn't be required to go through a rezoning process or a public hearing.
Councillor Turner.
And those bylaw changes, those are mandated from the province, correct? Like every municipality has to now comply with Bill 44?
Through your worship to Councillor Trainer, not every local government, but definitely the District of Summerland is subject to it. I think it has to be a population of 5,000 people. And as well for areas within the District of Summerland. So it has to be within the district's urban growth boundary, which this property is.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to kind of follow on that line, the primary driver behind the Bill 44 changes are being connected to municipal infrastructure, both sewer and water. And so that is one of our prime determinations about which neighborhoods are going to be under the rezoning by the province. Is there anything to add to that would help our residents understand which neighborhoods would be selected for this increased densification?
Yeah, to your worship, to Councillor Betts. Yep. So there's 4 criteria for where we must allow for up to 4 units, residential units of prescribed density in our zoning bylaw. You mentioned one connection to both districts, water system as well as the sanitary sewer system at the property, available at the property. Second, as I mentioned, the urban growth boundary. The other is the parcel size being less than 4,050 square meters. So if it's a large parcel, it doesn't have to necessarily comply. And as well, if the zoning that's in place is less than, has a minimum parcel size of less than 4,050 square meters, which this zoning does have that type of allowance for.
Councillor Peak.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Brad, in working under Bill 44, will the capacity for height be something that we can work with in those bylaws?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Peak, yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate the question from the public as well. And that question is, the province isn't prescribing necessarily, and that I'll go into a bit as to what necessarily means. The height that should be allowed by a local government. They definitely recognize that we have some authority to put our own restrictions on how development occurs to get up to 4 residential units as a allowance. Which we are doing with our proposed 3 residential zones, which are part of our open house starting next week with the public. They have those stated that our zoning bylaw cannot restrict the density being achievable. So I think one member of the public mentioned that one of their parcels in our community, and some of our parcels are quite small in nature. In order to allow for 4 units, we cannot restrict things like height or the floor area ratio or site coverage or setbacks through our zoning bylaw to make that lot not achievable to have that density. So that's something that they have prescribed through legislation. So although we do have the flexibility to prescribe the height, province could say that you can't just stop this development with height. If that makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you. So to follow up with that, looking at the lot coverage, so to allow up to 4 units on with the Bill 44 requirements, to allow up to 4, is that still subject to the % of lot coverage that we as the district have prescribed? So, and does this proposal fit within the percentage of lot coverage that the district has outlined?
If you worship Council Betsy, yes, for both. So they would still be required to fall within the site coverage requirement. And this project, I believe, meets it now, as well as it will meet it in the proposed regulations.
Councillor Peak.
Be it under Bill 44 or present, how do we look at the water table and the collection of water on any given lot, regardless of what the building's configurations are?
Just to clarify, if I can, through your worship to council, you mean like stormwater retention specifically, or the water table below the ground?
The water table. Well, I might ask both those questions, but start with the water table.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's guidance provided by the province in a provincial policy manual that they provided to all local governments as to their legislation is blanketed across these areas across BC for allowing up to 4 units. And we still need to allow for that, but that doesn't preclude other restrictions that there might be in place for development. If it's in a floodplain area, if it's next to a water course, which we need to have a riparian setback as an example, if it's in an environmentally hazardous area because of the landslide or geotechnical, all of those factors still are applicable to a development, and a development might not be achievable based on the site characteristics of a specific property, but that doesn't mean that we can't not move forward with considering 4 units. It just means that our zoning bylaw must allow for it, but these other factors still apply, if that makes sense. And sorry, with regards to the water table, that would be one, and stormwater retention. Some of that we will be prescribing on-site collection of stormwater to be filtered on-site on the property. We have some regulations that control that. That's definitely the site coverage one, for the amount of buildable area that's hardscaped on a property being 50%. That means 50% of it can't be buildings or structures. So there has to be areas where retention can occur on site. And it is a Summerland bylaw to treat that stormwater retention on your own property, so that it doesn't come onto the roadway, as an example.
Okay, somebody like to put a motion on the table, please? Councillor Barco?
I'd like to put the motion as written in the agenda.
Okay, that's for it to be read a third time and adopted.
Yeah. Could it go on the board maybe if we
Put it on the screen. And do I have a second for that? Councillor Van Alphen? Any further discussion? Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. One more question, Brad. If this was to not move forward tonight, what is the timeline that a new application could be made?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, if the application doesn't change, so that's a big criteria there, and it's denied, I believe there's a waiting period of 6 months, I think it is, within our development procedural bylaw before the application can be resubmitted.
Thank you, Brad. And just to reiterate, if it was to be exactly the same application, there would be no public hearing. It would just be a building permit issued by the district to move forward.
Through your worship to Council Patton, yes, the way our current bylaw is drafted, although we still have to go through engagement, but that's definitely, yeah, the case here.
Councillor Betts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to speak to the residents of the neighborhood and to say that I acknowledge all of the things that you're saying. And it's such a challenge to see our neighborhoods grow and evolve. And it would be such a struggle if that was right beside you, covering your gardens or beside your window. I understand that. But these changes are coming to us, and Canada does need more housing stock. BC needs more housing stock, and it's a decision that is forced upon us by the province of BC. And so I just want to let you know that, we acknowledge what you're saying, but here we are, we're evolving as a community, and hopefully this can bring more families and more residents and more taxpayers into our community who can help pay for amenities as we move forward, sidewalks and roads and rec centers and these kinds of things where we need more people to come to our town and open businesses. And hopefully this is an avenue to do that. Thank you.
I think that's the important message. All we can do here tonight is delay this for 6 months. Once this new provincial law kicks in, then it will happen without any public hearing at all. It's nights like this, we won't have them anymore. And I know it's going to be difficult for people all through the community that all of a sudden, where did this come from? There's going to be a building, somebody's going to be building something next door to them. And they've had, the neighbors will still get notice that it's happening, but there won't be any opportunity like this to come and talk about it. And it's certainly controversial in the municipal world in BC. Many of us aren't happy with this because it's this centralized planning as opposed to local planning, and it goes against why many of us ran for council. So it's a really difficult one for all of us. And I know it's going to be difficult for residents, and we need to do our best to explain to the community that this is coming, and we've been trying to do that. But it's if you're on sewer, there'll be no such thing as single detached housing anymore. That whole concept of a single detached house, a single house on a single lot, is gone. It's gone. Those days are over. That's basically, we're entering a really different era. And I know it's hard, minor neighborhoods affected, many of our neighborhoods are affected, and it's a big change. So I totally understand, people, it's disbelief that this is going to happen, but this is what's happening. So. Councillor Peak.
I'd like to add my own observations is that I decry the fact that our walkable neighborhoods are going to change in a very profound way. And it would make no difference if we voted down this particular application tonight, because it would come back to us. And we might think it's venal that somebody wants to make that much money off of one property, but you won't have control of your land in the same way as we have in the past. The character of our community that is on water and sewer will be quite different over the next 10 or 15 years. So we hear what you're saying and how you see that going to affect you and your property and your homes, but this is coming to us. This is what we will be working with in the coming months. So we just want you to understand, we really understand what you're saying.
Okay, if there's no, Councillor Turner.
Brad, we have an open house on April 21st to explain Bill 44 to the public. Is that correct?
To your worship, to Deputy Mayor Trainer, it's actually 2 sessions, April 16th on Tuesday from I think 3:30 to 6, and then also April 23rd, same time, 3:30 to 6 at the George Riga Arts and Cultural Center.
And there people can learn about what this is going to mean for Summerland. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. We move on to my mayor's report. Last Friday, April 5th, I was pleased to participate as one of the community panelists for the Summerland Secondary School grad presentations. Through their presentations, the grade 12 students shared their high school learning journeys and their future plans and aspirations. The presentations were inspiring and motivating, and it was obvious that students put a lot of effort into them. Since our last council meeting, there have been 2 regional district board meetings on April 4th and April 22nd that Councillor Van Elfen and I both attended. The regulation of short-term rentals was discussed at length at both meetings. Given the new provincial legislation has shifted the parameters on short-term rentals, the board agreed last week to abandon a vacation rental policy review that had previously been identified as a strategic priority. Unlike larger municipalities like Summerland, communities in rural areas have a choice of whether to opt in to the principal residence requirement under the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act. The board, the RDS board gave approval for rural areas D, that's Okanagan Falls, E, Caledon, and F, West Bench, to opt in. At last week's board meeting, the board also appointed me as an alternate to the Economic Trust of the Southern Interior Regional Advisory Committee in case one of the regular representatives is unable to attend a meeting. So the mayors of Penticton, Oliver, and Asuyas are the region's regular representatives. And finally, there are now at least four Ukrainian families and 2 Ukrainians living in Summerland, all of them on visas, giving them temporary residence in Canada for up to 3 years. As the war in their homeland continues, there's increasing concern over what will happen once their visas expire. The owners of the Sunflower Cafe, for example, have started a successful business, but they don't know whether to invest in it or not, given the uncertainty of their status. I have contacted our member of parliament, Dan Elbis, who has also been hearing from Ukrainians throughout his constituency. He raised the issue in the House of Commons, and he's organized a roundtable in West Kelowna for this coming Sunday to hear directly from those who are affected. I've arranged for the Summerland Ukrainians to attend the roundtable, and I'll be joining them myself. So that's my report. And CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last week, we began our residential organics collection program, and so far things are going well. However, since the first week also included collection of the garbage bin, this week will be the true test of our efforts to communicate the program. That's because this week we only have a collection of blue bins for recycled materials and green bins for yard waste and organics waste. Residents who need more information are encouraged to consult our webpage for more information or check out the links on the district Facebook page. On the theme of environmental stewardship, I would like to remind everyone that Earth Week is April 21 to April 26 this year. Join us on April 21st for the 18th Earth Day celebration hosted by Oasis and the Summerland Environmental Science Group, and the Earth Day Fair hosted by the district at Memorial Park. Visit www.summerland.ca/Earth Week for event details and the full week of events. Phases 3 and 4 of the Giant's Head Trail project are now underway. Residents can expect to see upgrades to the upper circulation road and connecting pedestrian trails, upper parking lot washroom, and the upper section of the grind trail, and a new park entrance washroom. We are also bucking up deadfall and dangerous trees to place large woody debris on certain trails and access points, which we desire to decommission for environmental reasons. At this phase in the project, it can look like we're causing more damage to those areas, but all the work is conducted under the supervision of a registered professional biologist to ensure contractors follow conservation best practices and the project's environmental plan. This visual impact will quickly return to a more natural effect if we all stay out of those areas. The work also includes remedial planting and invasive weed management, brush removal and fire hazard remediation work, and additional split rail fencing to keep people on dedicated trails. Once it is all complete, the efforts and investment will translate into an even safer place for public recreation and even better protections for the natural environment of this special place. Finally, I just wanted to point out that a for sale sign will be going up on the visitor center property on Highway 97 to the next week or two. The chamber-owned building and the district-owned land will be put up for sale together, with the chamber using its portion of the sale to relocate into a new downtown location, and the district earmarking its proceeds for tourism-related ventures. We are posting the opportunity in the newspaper, but any interested party can certainly reach out to Remax Real Estate here in Summerland, as they are facilitating the sale of the highway land and building. Until the sale is completed, residents and the traveling public can continue to enjoy the services offered at this location. And with that, I conclude my report.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for the CEO or myself? No? Okay. So we'll move on to the public comment period for anything that's on the agenda. A couple people pre-registered. Brad Bessler up first, please. Okay, Vicky Bessler.
Vicky Besler. Birds of feather. I'm here tonight not to be fooled how I think you're going to vote. Been here in 2019, knew before that vote. Pretty sure I know for this one. I'm here for me to stand up for what's right. I see Thor brought his posse with him again this time. Bylaws in Summerland are not for all. You 7 make that decision for the town. Bartlett Tree Services has no more right of being on agricultural land than a body shop that paints tractors. So in closing, are you part of the problem or part of the solution? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Council. Brad Besler. I'm here to speak to agenda item 9.2 regarding industrial company Bartlett Tree Service leasing and operating on ALR land. The applicant, Thor Clausen, owns the ALR property at 18420 Garnet Valley Road, but he does not own the company. And it's important to remember, this is the same Thor Clausen that instructed the Bartlett Tree Crew to illegally remove trees on the Woodbridge Nature Preserve in Trout Creek in 2018. It's the same Thor Clausen that built a commercial mushroom operation and secondary residence without any building permits and all in the setbacks. When council approved the variance for the 10 unpermitted mushroom structures and secondary residence in 2019, then Councillor Doug Holmes said, quote, "We have to get away from this culture of asking for forgiveness later rather than permission in advance. There's a perception in Summerland that you can get away with certain things and not play by the rules, and we've got to stamp that out. But you didn't do anything about it. Not a single fine. So in 2020 and after, Thor Clausen once again built more without permits. In February 2022, district staff officially instructed Thor to remove Bartlett from the ALR property. But rather than comply, Thor added 3 new Bartlett trucks and industrial trailers to the property in August 2022 and January and February 2023. And in February 2023, Thor still had the nerve to lie to district staff and say Bartlett didn't expand. It's insane. He's a compulsive liar and you know it. He's even lying in these application materials. So the question is, if another Summerland resident breaks the rules and leases ALR land to an industrial company and afterwards is ordered by the district to comply with the regulations, but instead that resident continues to break even more rules and lies to district staff about it, is council going to support that person's ALC application too? Because there are other ALR landowners that would like to lease part of their property to an industrial company for over $2,500 per month too. Or is this just Thor Clausen who's getting the special privileges?
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, we'll move on to our business 9.1. RCMP quarterly update. Sergeant Bentham, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'd asked the Summerland CAO just to have a little bit of FaceTime with you guys and present to you our annual performance plan and our last quarter stats. To solicit some feedback and input into what we'll be doing and planning for the next calendar year for Summerland RCMP. I'm hopeful to get some consultation with all of our partners and stakeholders just to ensure that our priorities align specifically with the district priorities and public safety priorities of the RCMP. Just to give you a quick snapshot of our Q4 and Q3 statistics and changes. We did see a significant increase in some uttering threats, and that was mostly pertaining to some neighbor landlord complaints that occurred over and over again. So there was a bit of a skew in the numbers there. And as well as some of our serious sexual offenses went up significantly, but again, it went from 2 to 3. So it's a small increase, an unacceptable increase, but it's a small increase. In relation to our auto theft, we had a significant increase in our auto theft in our community. We did, through our CompStat, and one of our tactical analysts identify that we had a prolific offender in the area. And we actually found this prolific offender in one of our stolens, and that individual is in custody. And shockingly, after that, our stolen auto stopped. And it's important to note that almost 70% of those stolen autos had keys left in the vehicle, which I'll kind of cover off here in a little bit. The other number that went up is our break and enters for other. It's kind of a misnomer. Our break and enters are broken up through residential, commercial, and other. That's going to represent our landfill, which we've been working with the district last year for some issues we've had over some mischief and break and enters. So we'll continue to work with them and some solutions to see that number decrease as we go forward. Some of the big ones that are important are our top 10 calls, and really the top 3 are important to note. Traffic incidents remains our top call for service. This really pertains to the highway and specifically the landslide area. And with the stops, what we're finding is a lot of essentially we'll call them road rage incident reports. People that are stuck in traffic and get pretty excited about it when the traffic does start moving. So we're seeing a lot of poor driving behavior. So that's something that we'll be focusing on specifically in the next little while as the landslide area starts to wind down. Another important one is our criminal code offenses and CDSA drug offenses. We're pretty steady year to year with only a 4% increase, or sorry, quarter to quarter. So we're kind of on pace for what we would typically see at the end of the year for Summerland. To get into our strategic focus, something that we've been working on, and we'll be looking at this is going to be a 3-pronged approach in terms of enhancing our public safety, specifically through crime reduction. That's a kind of a generic term, which I'll break into briefly. Accountability and governance in terms of our community engagement, as well as employee excellence, workplace culture, and employee wellness. What's just important to note for an annual performance plan, we don't get too deep into the weeds because we want to be able to stay flexible. So it's just important for us that it is measurable, just to ensure that we're able to look back through our year and ensure that we're achieving our goals. So crime reduction is going to start with education. 2 of the main points that we've decided to really focus on is fraud awareness. Summerland, giving our aging population, is still a real target for our seniors for fraud. And we've had some significant high dollar frauds come in the last 6 months in Summerland. So we started working with some local stakeholders, some local banking entities, Government of Canada, Government of BC, and we'll be doing some fraud awareness with one of our members, Constable Patty Evans, our senior constable at the detachment, to make sure that there's a resource for people so that they can at least call someone to figure out if the crazy email they just received or the phone call they just received is legitimate or not. And they're feeling comfortable to do so. What we're finding is embarrassment and shame is what was holding a lot of our seniors back when they do get victimized. We're trying to get rid of that stigma. The next would be a theft of and from our vehicle campaign. So we'll be looking at putting up signage at a lot of our hiking points, a lot of our tourist areas, to ensure that we're reminding people, don't leave your purse and wallet, keys, cell phone, anything like that in the car, lock it up in the trunk. And it's important that, again, we remember that almost 65% of our stolen vehicles were stolen with a key, which is very, very preventable. So we want to start to combat that. Another thing we're going to be using is a social media campaign, as well as our traditional media releases, especially as the weather gets warmer and our temporary population starts to grow. As our crime reduction continued, we'll be in targeted enforcement. So specifically, we'll be using our CompStat and our tactical analyst, Rachel Linkletter, who's going to really look at our stats and kind of help us focus on the areas that we can do most effective work at. So problem residences, that's identified through the CompStat, as well as working with Summerland bylaws to identify those residents that we're consistently called back to. And then focusing on repeat offenders. Summerland's a nice small community and we don't have a ton, but we do have some, and they cause a significant amount of grief for us. So the more we can focus to ensure that if they are bound by conditions, that we're ensuring they comply with those conditions, such as curfew and things like that, the better we are off at the end of the year. And then secondly, the targeted enforcement through traffic. Again, because it remains our highest call for service, our highway traffic issues, we don't have a lot of fatal accidents in our area, thankfully. But we do have a significant amount of traffic incidents. So we're going to be working with that in the landslide area with Modi, with the traffic flaggers, as well as BC Highway Patrol as our main partner, who's going to work with us weekly to set up road checks and just some education with the public as they come through here. Getting into community engagement, through this next fiscal year, we're planning on doing multiple Coffee with a Cop in Summerland. We're going to be approaching some coffee shops to find out where we'll be doing it. And we'll be doing it in conjunction with our first responder community, the fire department and EHS, as well as bylaws, so that community come out and kind of see who we are and what we do and can ask us lots of the tough questions they like to ask. We're also going to get involved with the grad parade. We're involved with our anti-bullying day, and we'll get involved with as many community event participation as we can throughout the year. We've already reached out to boat patrols through the West Coast Marine and our local enforcement. This is a very minimal cost to the detachment. They're already on duty and they'll bring their vessels out from the lower mainland. They'll be doing some education and some enforcement on the lakes and the beaches in and around Summerland this summer. As well, we've brought on a specific portfolio for one of our constables, Constable Ryan Holm. He's going to be our safe school liaison. So he'll start to do a lot more interaction with the schools. And you'll see a lot more interaction as it pertains to safety drills and just some more face time with the kids and teachers so they can have a better relationship with the police in our community. And lastly, are going to be working on a robust media and communication strategy, something that unfortunately has been pretty lacking within the Penticton South Okanagan Regional Detachment area. We now have Summerland MRO. Again, it's going to be our senior constable, Patty Evans, is going on the training in May to be a media relations officer. And she'll be able to start doing local media releases. And we'll also be able launching through Penticton Regional Detachment, a social media platform that we can dovetail in with District of Summerland as well when we do want to highlight events you're doing or vice versa. The biggest thing I'd like to see is to highlight the work that we're doing in our community outside of arresting people and giving people tickets. Because there is some really good community engagement working. For instance, two of our constables right now coach as a volunteer basis in the rugby team at Summerland Secondary. We aren't the greatest team right now, but we're working on it and we'll get there. But it's something like that that's important for the community to know that we're not just cops working here, but we're also community members living here. And last, the third pillar is employee and member wellness. This is important in the first responder community. The Summerland Fire Department, the district's really invested in some positive outcomes there. And we're going to continue to do that within the Summerland detachment in terms of courses like psychological body armor and verbal judo to equip our members to be a little more resilient with the difficulties we face in our job. We're looking at doing detachment barbecues, employee appreciation, some challenge fundraisers. It's always fun to do some stuff with fire and police and district and some competitions, whether it's going to be softball tournaments. Dunk tanks, I understand, will be involved at some point. So, and then continue to provide professional training, professional development equipment to enhance job performance through our CMP members, and evolve our workplace strategies to be responsive to emerging and competing priorities. We've got a finite number of members, but they are extremely professional and extremely good at what they do. I want to continue to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of that. So that brings me to the end of what will be our annual performance plan and our focus this year. And I was hopeful if anyone has any feedback or areas you'd like us to focus on, we'd love to hear about it. And we'd love to be able to shift any priorities that you feel are important for the local RCMP.
Okay, thank you very much. And appreciate the community engagement that's happening and on fraud awareness. I can just give the plug for this Thursday that there's a session being hosted by the RCMP, Revenue Canada, and the Credit Union on how to be scam smart, and that's at the Summerland Community Center. So I guess between 3 and 5 p.m. this Thursday. So I guess just anybody can show up and.
Yep, anyone can show up. There'll be a panel there and you can ask questions and they'll do some presentations as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Council, any questions? Councillor Trainer.
It's really nice to see this report. It's probably one of the best that I've seen since I've been on council, and I like that it's well-rounded. I like that you've included a lot of different aspects of the community, including your own constables, which I think it's really important to take care of them and make sure that they're enjoying their work and getting by okay. I like the school engagement. I think that that's really important. And I also like the coffee with a cop. I think that a lot of people would probably join you for that and want to know what's going on in our town. And then I fully agree with you on increasing traffic patrols coming out of the slide, because you can definitely see the rage when people get out of the 50-kilometer zone. It's just like they go, and then they're into 70, and then as you know, it bounces up and down until you get into Penticton. So I think that extra enforcement there and education, explaining to people that it is what it is. It's a slide. We're trying to fix it. And I think that would really help. And seeing your presence there, like seeing the police cars, I think would really help just kind of, keep people at bay until it's repaired. So yeah, so thank you for this presentation. It's very good.
Sorry, Councilor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was kind of surprised to see this stat. 63% of all vehicle thefts involved a spare key. Like, we've always heard lots of vehicle theft stats, but I hadn't heard that part or that particular explanation before. And I think, couldn't hear everybody here better go home and rethink of where their hide key is, because almost everybody has them, and the thieves know that too. So that's an interesting, informative kind of a stat to make us all be more careful.
Thank you. Sorry, just to respond. Yeah, there's a key and also a garage door opener. It's something almost everyone does, leave the garage door opener and a spare key in their vehicle in the event. And unfortunately, a lot of break-in enters as well as theft of vehicles, theft from vehicles are the direct result of that. So always a good reminder, and we'll work at getting some education out there as we get on going here. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very kindly, Your Worship. Constable, I was very interested to hear that you're going to have a dedicated constable. You said Patty Evans working on banking. So I'm wondering, because there is a stigma attached and there is a lot of shame if you've got somebody who harassed you and you decide to pass some money over or whatever. Is this a number? Is this the regular office number if people want to talk to Patty, or how will that work?
We always encourage everyone, Patty doesn't, well, love for her to work 24/7, but unfortunately she does like her time off. So we would encourage anyone to call into the non-emergency line. We have 9 constables working at any one given time. And they're all kind of averse to this. Patty's going to be our spearhead in terms of our one catch point for the banks, the local stakeholders, Government BC, Government Canada, and some of our other resources. So she'll be the one that kind of spearheads and pulls everything together. And then she'll also be in charge of training the other members within the detachment so that everyone's on the same page and can respond to the members of the public, regardless of when and where they call.
I think it's a terrific program. I worked in retail for many years here in the Valley. There were a lot of people that were single, and they got in trouble because they didn't have any recourse, someone to talk to or whatever. And I think someone that is a trusted member of society who would maintain privacy, that those opportunities will be really well used. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Don't see any others. So do we need a motion to receive for information? Yeah. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, Sergeant. Moving on to item 9.2, ALC referral from Garnet Valley Road. Mr. Dalvit, do you take this? Yeah.
I'll just wait for the slides to come on the monitor there. Okay, thanks, Greg. So the district's in receipt of a ALC referral application to consider a non-farm use for the placement of a tree removal contracting business located at 18420 Garnet Valley Road. This subject property is in the agricultural land reserve, and home occupations within the agricultural land reserve, which this is currently designated, do have specific restrictions under that agricultural land reserve use regulation, which guides land use in the ALR. The subject property is also designated as agriculture in the district's official community plan, and the relevant OCP policies for this application, based on staff's inspection of the OCP, is that the 7.2.21 to maintain the integrity of the ALR. 7.2.2.3 to recognize agriculture as a legitimate land use constraint when planning for urban and rural developments. 7.2.3.7, which states that support the development of agricultural related industries such as food processing and packaging in the industrial areas. That's a key point there. So this property is also zoned as A2 agricultural large acreage. And within the district zoning bylaw, the home occupation use of a type 3 home occupation is permitted in the A2 zoning. We have 3 different classifications for home occupation, and a type 3 is our largest classification, which allows exterior storage up to 100 square meters. The use of an accessory building, which isn't allowed for the other 2 categories. That is currently allowed on the property up to the type 3 regulations. So the specific proposal to the ALC that the applicant has provided is provided in this image is a markup of the proposed buildings and structures that are proposed to be used for Bartlett Tree Services. Those are the areas identified in orange highlight, which was marked up by the applicant. You can see they got a totals there on the image. Sorry if it's hard to make out, but basically all the various structures and areas add up to a total square meter coverage area of, again, both exterior storage for equipment for the tree contracting business, as well as interior buildings of 505.84 square meters. And so that's what was been applied for here to allow for this non-farm use of this scale of 505 square meters for Bartlett Tree Services specifically. In terms of the subject property history, the subject property was issued a development variance permit in 2019, which was specific to the mushroom farm operation and the associated buildings. The staff report at the time of this DVP indicated the presence of the tree contracting business also on the property, and how the wood chips from the tree business created a synergy with the mushroom farm operation. But it was staff's belief at the time, based on our review of the file, that the staff assumed that the tree contracting business was in conformance with the district's home occupation type 3 regulations. This assumption is kind of clarified further from the ALC's inspection report that happened right after the DVP. It was done by the ALC's enforcement officer, which is part of council's package, that the business met the regulations of 4 vehicles on site, 2 employees, and a maximum area of 100 square meters. So following the submission of a new bylaw enforcement complaint in 2022, that was specific to the tree contracting business, an investigation was completed by district enforcement staff in February of 2022 that confirmed that the scale of Bartlett Tree Services has expanded and was no longer in conformance with the district's type 3 home occupation regulations. The district's enforcement officer, as well as the ALC enforcement officer, provided joint correspondence, which is included in council's agenda package, with a deadline to bring the tree contracting business into compliance with both the district's regulations and the ALC's regulations by October 27, 2023. Through either the consideration of a non-farm use application, which is what was generated this application before council today, or the alternative that we were recommending through our correspondence was to move Bartlett Tree Services to an industrial zoned property as an alternative method to achieve compliance. On October 27, 2023, on that was a Friday, an application was submitted to the ALC portal for the non-farm use application, which is now being brought forward to council tonight. So following the submission of the ALC application, the district's bylaw enforcement officer attended the subject property on November 1st. So that was the Monday after the submission to confirm the level of scale of the current use of Bartlett Tree Services happening on the property. The owner was at the property at the time and confirmed the storage of large commercial vehicles happening on the property. And there's some images that were part of the inspection report shown there. 7 employee personal vehicles, 7 to 8 employees at the time working for Bartlett Tree Services, but the owner did indicate that at full complement that there would be 12 employees for the business and multiple accessory buildings that are converted to Bartlett Tree Services business usage. So I mentioned earlier at the start of the presentation that the Agricultural Land Reserve Use Regulation has regulations specific to home occupations. So there's some criteria I want to lay out from the ALC. A home occupation use is allowed, provided that the use of agricultural land for a commercial or similar use within a structure is permitted if the following conditions are met. That the structure is accessory to and located on the same parcel as a residence. So you can't just place a business on a farm parcel, you got to live there as well, which this requirement is being met. And then B, the structure occupies an area that does not exceed either one of these two things. The limit specified in the applicable local government by an enactment or First Nation government law, or if there is no bylaw in place, say we don't have a zoning bylaw that's specific to home occupations, that the maximum is 100 square meters of size. So we do have, as mentioned, type 3 home occupation regulations and a definition here specifically for what a type 3 home occupation is. The district zoning bylaw identifies a home occupation as one that's clearly subordinate to the principal use of residence on the property, residential. That there be no external indication that the business is operating on the property, that there be no external storage or display of materials or equipment, that there shall not generate vehicle traffic or parking needs in excess of the principal use of residential. And then further to that, there's type 3 specific regulations that are bolded here that are specific for this application. That there be no more than 2 employees other than the residents that live at that property employed by the home occupation. And then as mentioned, kind of consistent with the Agricultural Land Commission, our bylaw as well restricts type 3 home occupations to a maximum floor area of 100 square meters. So again, keeping that 100 square meter regulation from the ALC going forward with our zoning bylaw as well. So this application was presented to the Agricultural Advisory Committee in January 18th, 2024. In summary, the applicant was not able to attend this meeting, and the questioning of the Agricultural Advisory Committee members was that what has really changed on the property to trigger the application submission now, which we asked or answered that question to the members of the AAC. There was some concerns identified of precedence of allowing this industrial type of operation being located on ALR land in agriculture. But as well, there was comments from the AAC that they wanted to support the mushroom farm, but not necessarily Bartlett Tree Services being located on the property. In this meeting, the Agriculture Advisory Committee recommended that council not proceed with authorizing the application to move forward to the ALC. However, the applicant following this meeting requested that item be reconsidered by the Agriculture Advisory Committee at its next meeting of February 15th, 2024, as he wasn't able to attend the January meeting. And following a delegation presentation from the applicant, the Agriculture Advisory Committee provided new comments where they see that there's an integration between the tree contracting company and the mushroom farm, and that there might need to make an exception for Bartlett Tree Services due to the uniqueness of the mushroom farm operation. So based on those new comments from the applicant, the Agricultural Advisory Committee then recommended that council proceed with authorizing the application to move forward to the ALC. So in terms of discussion, I've got a couple of points here and then I'll pass it off to the applicant for his presentation. And the 2019 staff report assessing the synergy of Bartlett Tree Services with the mushroom farm was based on the assumption that the home occupation use regulations of the district was being complied with. As indicated in this proposal, Bartlett Tree Services has grown to be much larger than the limitations allowed by our Type 3 home occupation regulations. The intent of both the district's and the ALC's home occupation regulations is to restrict business operations on farm parcels, to still consider them the accessory use on the property and not the primary use of the property. And that the primary use must be either residential or agriculture. In addition, the restrictions are aimed to maintain the integrity of the ALR, again, an OCP policy of us as well, for agricultural purposes with a key policy goal of our OCP, as I mentioned. And rather than encouraging the proliferation of large-scale commercial operations on agricultural land within the district of Summerland. Next slide. Given the scale of the current tree contracting business, staff sees the most appropriate use definition is not home occupation, but rather contractor service general, which is currently only permitted in the M2 heavy industrial zone. While contractor services limited is allowed in the M1 light industrial zone and the M1A business industrial zone. For this reason, if this council so chooses to allow this application to proceed to the ALC, and ALC as well moves forward with supporting the non-farm use application, it's my staff recommendation to the applicant that they come back with a temporary use permit to allow for a contractor service general use to be cited on the property. So if council does move forward with moving this to the ALC tonight, then it would most likely be required to come back for council in the form of a temporary use permit for a contractor service general use. In summary, from staff's perspective, the use of agricultural land in the agricultural land reserve for an industrial commercial operation does not meet the goals of the district's official community plan or the purpose of the Agricultural Land Commission to protect and preserve agricultural land. It is for this reason the staff has been recommending to the owner of Bartlett Tree Services that it be relocated to another property, and is further recommending that the ALC application not be authorized to proceed to the ALC. With respect to the applicant's rationale that the wood chips produced from Bartlett Tree Services are a required input feedstock for the mushroom farm operation, we assert that while this may be true, there might be alternative operational options for Bartlett Tree Services to locate Bartlett Tree Services somewhere else on the property, in the community that's been more appropriately zoned in conformance with the district zoning bylaw, and then still truck or transport those wood chips for the mushroom farm operation on site. And with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you. So as this is a recommendation for denial, the applicant has the right to speak. So that's correct. Maybe process, we ask Mr. Clausen to come up now, and council, if we have any questions for Mr. Clausen, we can ask them now, and maybe hold questions to Mr. Delbert later. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Mr. Delbert, Graham, all others in attendance. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Some of what was stated here is not factually correct, and we'll go over some of that. In the future, you can ask me any questions that you would like once I have finished. The tree company, in one form or another, has been on the property for 20 years. Regardless of the amount of trucks or staff, as it occupied the exact same area. Only in the last year has the size, area, or the use been questioned, all of which has nothing to do with the operation of the tree company or the farm. The land in which my property sits is not farmable in any traditional sense. There is no topsoil. We had test holes dug to put in electrical and irrigation lines or even fence posts, and we encountered rocks and more rocks and more rocks. I do have 16 walnut trees that have now surpassed 50 years of age and are of the size of trees that would be less than 20 despite proper watering and fertilization. Essentially, the land's not tillable or plantable, which regulates the land to a non-traditional farming application. I grew up on a farm in Summerland. I paid my way through college working in the orchards and working in Johnny Bevan's custom cannery. I'm from a farming background, and I know how difficult it is to have a sustainable farm, yet alone a farm that can support families and employees. The area where we park, we do not work off the farm. We only park there overnight. The area where we park the vehicles and operate the business has not changed since I purchased the property over 20 years ago. The town has issued us a business license annually for those 20 plus years. It is and always was an area at the west side of the shop building that was always for trucks and equipment to drive around on. So it cannot be said that this interferes with the potential farming of the property. It hasn't for 20 years. I was approached by Mr. Callow 11 years ago requesting wood chips as he was experimenting growing mushrooms on a local substrate. The wood chips. He'd come around and dig the wood chips out of the back of the trucks when I had deciduous trees like elm and tree of heaven, two invasive species that the strains we grow do well on. Essentially, when we take down trees, many of which are invasive, we turn them into a high-end, highly desirable, healthy food product with amazing health benefits without the use of any pesticides, fungicides, chemicals of any nature. It's pure. As Brian had no way to advance this amazing farming idea on his own, I suggested a partnership. We talked about establishing a good working model that would have a supply of the necessary substrate by actually creating an amazing, innovative little farm. We didn't jump blindly into this venture. We hired Jane Campardo, a local consultant, to assist us in preparing a comprehensive business plan. I took that plan and went to the town. At that time, Ian McIntosh, who was head of development services, and I went over what was required to proceed with the greenhouses, the buildings, and how the farm integrated with the tree company. This is your staff. The farm was not viable and is not viable without the tree company after this discussion and verbal support. After this discussion and verbal support, we approached the credit union, and they liked the idea so much that although I had to back it, they lent us the money to get started. Imagine an experimental, innovative mushroom farm in the middle of our little town. Within the first few years, we were invited by Mr. McIntosh and the chamber to a business symposium with our Japanese sister city to showcase business and innovation in agriculture in our little town. The delegates were very interested in the partnership and utilization of the only available substrates that we had, and spent a great deal of time asking questions and discussing how they might be able to implement something similar in their own communities. The next person to hold Mr. McIntosh's position was Kevin Taylor, who visited the farm and sat up several times as we inquired about multiple hydrometers, one for the farm, one for Bartlett in my name, but paid for the tree company, and one for the home plate. These were all granted, along with a variance permit that was supported by council to add extra buildings to the site for the farm. All of this with the knowledge that the tree company was necessary to have the farm. It is rare, and I've only found one farm, ours, that on under 2 acres can support a living wage for the farmer and staff. It's an amazing little farm, only made possible by the supply of the wood chips and the relationship with the tree company. We have invested close to $500,000 in infrastructure. To replace it today would be closer to more than $750,000. All this was done with the implied consent and support of the council and development services staff. As Brian and his wife Faith have expanded their family, we added on to the farm manager suite above the shop. In applying for the permit, I was instructed by development services that the septic system, although still quite functional, will have to be redone to accommodate the staff at the tree company. Brian and Faith's expanding family, he now has 2 little girls, are students on the farm in my home. Yes, Development Service asked us to include the Bartlett staff in the septic design for our farm manager's suite. Every decision we have made financially and for our families and the farm was done because we thought and were led to believe the Development Services, Council, and the community lauded this as a shining example of how innovation can lead to farming beyond the traditional. As most of you likely know, there were some concerns raised by a member of the community and forwarded to various government agencies, including local bylaws, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Agricultural Land Commission, Workers' Compensation. It was these concerns that led to various government agencies becoming involved. This meant this meant a concern forward to Ag Canada, leading to Christina Forbes, regional agrologist of the Ministry of Agriculture, visiting our farm. She viewed the farm. We went through the whole story with her on how we grow the mushrooms, the Cree Company involvement. We had her full support, and she found no substance to the concern. This also meant a concern filed with the ALC. If you guys can imagine walking out of your office or your home to an enforcement officer in a bulletproof vest with a hand on a sidearm, a surprise visit to say the least. By the end of the visit and standing where the tree trucks park, this is where I disagree with that 100 square meters, because he wrote that after the fact. We stood in that entire area, me and Mr. Birchmore. Mr. Birchmore said, and I quote, "This is an amazing little farm and really shows that small acreage farming is viable. When this issue with the concern is resolved, I would like to bring the Minister of Agriculture here to show her. They receive so many applications for properties like mine that people purchase and try to remove from the LC so that they can create a little estate. Their reasoning often being that it's too small to make a living off of. We've proven that incorrect." This is from Mr. Birchmore's report at the time. The District of Summerland has no bylaws restricting commercial vehicles to park in the agricultural land reserve as well. Officer Birchmore has spoken with District of Summerland bylaws and planning, and neither have any concerns about the 4 trucks being parked on the property as at little impact the 100 square meters that he added when he wrote the report. That was not how it was discussed and viewed at the time. He did not have a tape measure. He did not mark anything off. He pulled that straight out of their own regulations. Okay, let's get that clear. The impact, the 4 trucks being parked on the properties has little impact to the farming operation. The parking of the commercial vehicles negates any ALC concerns, as the wood chips being brought back to the farm are essential to the farming operation. Without the wood chips, the mushroom operation would cease to exist. This is directly from the ALC report. Now, from your own staff. This is WTF receives wood chips from a tree removal and tree care business that operates on the farm as an integral part of the farming operation. That's your own staff's words. The regional agrologist from the BC Ministry of Agriculture submitted a memo after an inspection carried out at the request of the District of Summerland. The memo further states that given both parcel size and management practices of the operation, the existing sightings of the buildings to maximize agricultural opportunities on the land is apparent. We were told on a subsequent visit by Mr. Birchmore that to stop the continued filing of concerns, applying for a non-farm use permit would accomplish this. And he said, I can't remember the exact words, but that this would just be a formality so that there would not be any misconceptions. This was said in the presence of my partner, Brian, and witnessed. If the tree company is asked to move, it will not remain in Summerland. It will centralize to Penticton, and there will no longer be a benefit to the tree company to drop chips to the farm, likely leading to the farm having to close down and cease operations. Losing the benefits of the farm and the tree company to the town, the $1 million+ returned annually in wages and materials and supplies to local businesses, the 8 to 12 good paying jobs, the volunteer efforts like saving the oak in front of the Baptist or the church, donating chips to the community gardens and multiple farms around the community. Those are only a few of the things we do. Most of them go unsaid because I don't think it's necessary to blow your own horn. The Mushroom Farm has a YouTube channel with 60,000 followers. The first Title I reads is Summerland, BC. The same for its Facebook page was 10,000 followers and Instagram with 15,000. Because of overlapping things with one of our programs, it's been viewed by citizens of the world 700,000 times, with Summerland, BC being the title on each one of those. We have also had over 300 students from all over the world, New Zealand, Australia, Mauritius, England, Brazil, all over the US and Canada, to name a few. I had an individual had a B&B in the community stop and thank me as some of the international students stayed with him. In fact, we've had colleges bring classes here, such as the multiple visits from Okanagan College culinary classes to educate them on where food comes from and sustainable farming. Or Thompson Rivers University brought their class here to learn the science behind substrates and fungi. And they took samples of our fungi strains for their research, one being to find a cure for the white-nosed bat fungus. But more than that, I've invested, because of the support of the ag community, because of the support of development services and council, my life savings into this venture. If this is denied, I'd likely have to sell the property to survive. Myself, my son, my grandson, Brian and Faith and their 2 daughters would give up the dream of raising their children on an operating farm in Summerland. Your decision is impactful. Please do not take it lightly. Visit the farm. I invite all of you and anyone in the community to visit. Take a tour, see for yourselves, hear our story, ask questions, as previous staff and members of council have done. Learn the truth and the facts. Not all one reads on Facebook is truthful. We are open. We are transparent. Anybody can come and walk the farm and see where we park the trucks and how it integrates and how our operation proceeds. We are open. If promoting and preserving farmland and agriculture is your mandate, our little farm and the relationship with the tree company is a shining example of how this can be accomplished when thinking outside of the box. We are a must visit for anybody. Anybody who leads anything or creates anything new faces adversity when they're the first ones across the threshold. I'm not asking for much, just a 3-year renewable permit to continue on the same fashion that we have been. Just the current area in the application, a very small percentage of the property that's not farmable. There's much, much more to this story some of you may be aware of. Before you make a decision, let's talk and learn what got us here and why, and show the rest of the valley, the province, and the country that we are an open-minded community, agriculture first, and all inclusive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Could you stay there? Somebody might have questions.
These, by the way, are over 200 letters of support. We had to stop taking them. I get stopped on the street daily with people wanting to support us in this community. Daily.
Okay, thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Barkwell.
You've been operating there for a long time, started off small. I know my sister-in-law used to work for you there.
So let's back that up. When I moved to that farm, I had 4 trucks. I had 8 employees. The only thing different right now is we have several more parked vehicles. Right now, I have 6 employees. When they say we've grown, yeah, we've got more vehicles there, but I don't have the staff. The office space is the same. The shop space is the same. The space where we actually park the trucks is the same. And nothing has changed in that.
Let him ask the question, please.
Okay, so, and then you built a residence for your partner and place your staff. You did that without a building permit, correct?
Yes and no.
You applied for the building permit after it was brought to your.
No, we applied for the building permit for the shop. We built the suite up top with the intention of having the offices for the business there. It didn't work out that way. We put the businesses in a small outlying and my daughter moved up into that area up on the top of that suite.
Do you have an occupation permit for that area?
We have an application. We have a current building permit in the works. It's the area is been built out. I have yet to put the septic system in before I can get the occupancy permit.
So you don't have, and how long ago was that request for a septic system made to you?
My permit expires this month and but I need to renew it. We've had some extraordinary expenses with legal fees that have tapped us. I'm sure you can relate to that. So I'll be applying for an extension to get the field put off until this fall.
And how long ago did you get the building permit for the suite?
You'll have to ask Mr. Delvit, was that 2 years? I think it's 2 years.
Right.
And we didn't start right away. It was just completed last fall.
And how long ago was it that we gave you the development variance permit for the buildings that you had built?
That was 2019. Now, can I speak to that for just a second?
Yeah.
In my initial conversation with Ian McIntosh, we had our business plan and we had laid out all the buildings and things that we wanted to build. His advice to me, coming from your staff, was, look, he said, the greenhouses, they don't need any permits. These other buildings will need permits. You don't need electrical because that's done through the BC Electrical Institute or however it's done. We have a commercial guy that does that for us. We cut all our own lumber. So his advice to me, he says, look, you're cutting your own lumber. You need to have your own inspectors. You need to have your own engineered drawings, all of that kind of stuff. He said, it'll take 6 months to a year to get your permits and approval because at that time there was upheaval in the development services department. He said that he was moving on. It would take a while. We needed to get started. So his advice to me, and I wish I had kept the email, was to start with construction, make sure I follow codes, and make sure everything is done the way we had discussed and put in our plan, which is what we did. When we wanted to add on the one that we required the variance permit for, it wasn't an outside source. It was myself that said, hey, let's get this all up to date. And I approached the town at that time to say, let's get everything legalized. Let's get everything up to date. Let's get everything permitted properly. It was not brought forth by anybody else. It wasn't the town that approached me. It was myself that approached the town.
It's controversial at the time. I'll let somebody else ask some questions.
Councillor Trainer.
Thor, what is your hope for Bartlett Tree Services? Like, where do you see it going? Are you planning on more growth? Are you wanting to stay the same? What is your long-term plan?
The long-term plan for Bartlett has changed. So we initially had the thought of growing up to 12 employees in our area and having someone else assist me with sales. That's changed. We've taken part of my territory, Peachland, basically everything north of Summerland, and put that towards the Kelowna office. So my area is actually downsized, not grown. And that happened recently. And that's where we see it staying. The demographic in the South Okanagan just isn't enough to support more than what we currently have.
Can you see yourself eventually selling? I don't really know how Bartlett works, but would you eventually sell your portion to Penticton or to the Kelowna?
So I had a tree company called Arbortech. I sold that to Bartlett Tree Experts. Bartlett Tree Experts is not owned by myself. Okay, I run it and manage it. Their mandate is that I run it like an individual little company. They want us to have accounts in the town. They want us to support the communities. They want us to do as much business as we can with local business, and which is what we do. You know, we employ all local people. We get our gas at the Shell. We have an account at Timber Mart. We have an account at the rental center, et cetera, and we use all local contractors. They do not see themselves expanding further in this area size-wise. If they do, they would centralize and move to Penticton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question through to Mr. Clausen, if I could. Do you store fuel on site for your trucks?
No, it's Bartlett's mandate. I used to when it was my company. Bartlett's mandate is no, they don't want any fuel stored on site. Okay. That's why we purchase at the local Shell.
Thank you. And then a further question, if I may, where the trucks are parked behind the building, and I know this answer, but I just want it clarified for everybody here. It's parked on dirt. Am I correct? It's not asphalt. It's not.
Oh, no, it's the original base that my farm is made out of, which is sand and gravel. It's not asphalt. There's nothing paved. And they are behind the shop on purpose. They're not visible from anywhere on the street when you drive by. You cannot see them.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Peak.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I have not been on your property, but I'm interested in how you've used that land in the past and how you continue to use it. So the area in which you park your vehicles, has that changed over time?
No.
And the area that you have expanded to, whatever the buildings, because I've seen the descriptions, are you intending to make them any larger?
They are all farm use structures. If we expand the mushroom farm, yes, we will be adding buildings, but those are all farm use buildings. They're all permitted that way. They're not Bartlett buildings.
Okay, may I ask the question, then you have an area where Bartlett employees have certain equipment?
Yeah, I have the building, the shop, the big barn style building that I built shortly after I moved onto the property. That's where we meet in the morning. That's where we have our chainsaws and a washroom for both the employees of the farm as well as my staff in the mornings.
Thank you. I see the area that you use for all the purposes is still agricultural land, and that would not change because of the use that you have. If anyone came after you, that bare land would still be available for them to do whatever they wish to do with.
I don't know that I understand your question.
You aren't converting the land from the possibility of agricultural use.
No, in fact, the opposite. We're taking land that's not farmable and we've created a little farm on it. And we can't grow, we can't put anything in the ground. We can't plant trees, we can't plant grapes, we can't plant anything. So this is a way to have a farm that is sustainable, but it has to be in conjunction with the tree company for the availability of the substrate.
The point I'm trying to make is that the agricultural land doesn't change. So we have a nursery planting north of here in town, and they plant above the ground. Your property, if you were no longer there, could be a tree planting property. They could grow seedlings because they're not in the ground either. There are other businesses that could use the property in a similar way to you do, because you're not in the ground.
Correct. The difference being is we have not stripped the land. We have built above. Our buildings are on blocks, whereas the tree company that you're talking about, they strip the topsoil and put down 12 inches of gravel to do their farming on. That is not returnable to the original condition. Ours is.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Thor. I do have a question, and you spoke of it, and you indicated the 3-year temporary use permit. What is your future plan if there was that temporary permit that would have to come back to us from the ALC?
When I was at the agricultural, so there were a couple of things. When they had the initial meeting of the Agricultural Development Committee, the invite was sent to an email that was a secondary address, not to the one I applied under. So it's not that I missed that meeting. I was never formally invited to that meeting. So it was under the guidance of Mr. Delavitt. Thank you for allowing me to set up a secondary meeting. I would have been there with bells on, right, to be able to tell our story. When we did that, we got 100% approval from them. Some of their suggestions were, well, why don't we give them a long-term permit or anything like that? I don't want that. I don't think that's right for the town. I don't think that's right for agriculture because it gives too much leniency and too much variance. I'm 60, I'll be 61 in June. I do plan on retiring at some point in time. At that point, likely 3 to 5 years, things may get reassessed. We may have come up with other ways to do things. I think it's fair and appropriate that it gets reviewed every 3 years. I think that's an honest approach so that if things change, that it can be dealt with at that time.
Thank you. So Yeah, because there is a time limit on a temporary use permit, as you know. So I guess what I was in my head wondering is if the 3 years had passed, would you be looking at in the course of 3 years, maybe looking at a different location, if you were thinking of staying in the same place, I'm just trying to figure out in the next 3 years, what your plan of action for that property would be if you feel that it should be the same, because it will come up on a temporary use, does come back up for another round. And so I was just wondering if your thoughts in regards to the future would maintain the same.
Our hope is that the tree company remains on the property in its current size, and the mushroom farm is able to expand. You know, that's our hope, you know, that we can continue growing our business. Our business was doing really well and growing quite well until we've ended up with these other financial constraints over the last few years, which will hopefully be resolved shortly. You know, but that's the plan. But I think it's fair that it's not a permanent thing. Mr. Delovic can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the suggestions made by the Agricultural Advisory Committee, was that we do a longer term. And I wasn't in agreement with that, because I think it should be reviewed every 3 years, because things do change. I mean, I could die tomorrow. Hopefully not, but it's possible.
Councilor Vanel.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on what Councilor Peak was saying, and I agree wholeheartedly. It's dirt's dirt. The dirt's there. The dirt's always going to be there. And if Bartlett tree surface disappeared tomorrow, it could be fenced off, it could be a horse corral. It's still agriculture. It's not asphalt paving, you know, it's not a helicopter pad or an illegal building. It's parking. So if the trucks weren't there, it could still be farmed. If there was a worldwide shortage of carrots tomorrow, we could farm it. Yeah,
you could try.
You can try. I know what you mean. I was at the Agriculture Advisory Committee meeting where it was passed unanimously after you presented, and that was pretty impressive. Question through to Brad, if I may. On a type 3 home occupation, you said you're allowed 2 employees. Now that's 2 employees on site, not 2 employees that arrive and leave. Like if I had a type.
Councilor Val, let's finish with or first, and then we can ask Mr. Dolvik questions.
I apologize.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Mr. Clausen? Councilor Marco.
So part of your business has been training people, right?
On the farm?
Yeah.
Yes.
On how to grow mushrooms and everything like that.
Yes. Yeah.
They stay in a trailer there?
We have an RV on site that they're allowed to stay in. That was approved by the LC.
Does it meet any of the district's regulations for on-site accommodation?
I don't know. I have been advised that I may have to apply for another permit. We've applied for a lot of permits, Richard. I think I'm the only farm in the entire province that had to apply for a permit for an outside frost-free tap so we could work in the wintertime and have an inspector stand there the whole time for the whole day while we installed it. So we've jumped through a lot of hoops, and I think we'll probably have to jump through another one, even though the ALC said that they didn't have an issue with that if it was for student occupation.
And the people that you train, they have the same methods, use the same substrate, chips from chippers.
Some use wood chips. Many come for different reasons. We had a medicinal grow operation out of California that came up. They were trying to see if they could find a different strain that might grow on the remnants of their product, the stalks and things. We had a gentleman from Texas that came to the farm for a month because he worked with alternative school kids that didn't learn traditionally, and they had an outdoor market garden, and he was trying to introduce them to science. So his school paid for him to attend to our farm for a month so that he could develop a lab and grow mushrooms, and the students could use that to do that. He took his students from a 20% passing to an 85% passing, and with 60% going on to post-secondary. We have all kinds of people, and some in the cities are trying to find different strains that may grow on coffee. It's the same process, though.
Yeah, I didn't really want to know about the exceptions. The ones who are really trying to do a commercial business in the model of yours would have to use some sort of substrate,
woody substrate predominantly, yes.
Yeah, and wood chips, and they don't have access, they don't have a Bartlett Tree Company on their farms and their mushroom farms, and unlikely, I would presume.
I can't speak to that, Richard, because I don't know. But it is how we do things that attract them as students to our property, and it's how they can search out a substrate in their area that we may not have, well, that we don't have here, that's not available to us. So we use the wood. They may do something elsewhere that's available, like an inner city mushroom farm has the ability to gather coffee grounds from hundreds of coffee shops to grow mushrooms on. We don't have that opportunity. That's their opportunity. We don't have a massive grow up that we can work in conjunction with to try and find, and there isn't one yet, but to find a strain to grow on. We have this substrate in our area because it's all that's available here.
So how many people do you train a year?
Over the last 8 or 9 years, we've had 300 students pass through from all over the world. Like I said, Australia, Mauritius, Brazil, New Zealand, all over the continental United States, Mexico, Canada. We have a current student from inner city Vancouver here. And they all come to this little town.
I agree that your driveway's not very good for growing things on, but I've seen that. But it is in the land reserve, and Councillor Peak and Councillor Van Alphen have spoken about the agricultural capabilities of it still. So there's two issues here. There's the agricultural usage regulations, which are meant to preserve farmland, and there's the district's uses for business use of home. And what do you say, if you're in my seat, to all the other people in town, the tow truck business, the TELUS businesses, the Esplanade, your competitions who pay commercial rates to go to commercial places? They're your competition, and you've got an unfair advantage being on your property there.
I would say, Mr. Barkle, that's a very closed-minded view, a very, very closed-minded view. Like I said, we're the first to cross the threshold here, right? Where we're integrating a commercial operation with farm. The farm doesn't exist. The land is not traditionally farmable without the tree company. We're leading the charge here. We're not following anybody's footsteps. It's not a tow truck company. If a tow truck company could prove to you that he could farm the land because of the tow truck company, then you should consider it.
But that's not the question. We're not talking, you've got a mushroom farm that is exceptional, no question about it. But it doesn't require the trucks to be parked on that property and that business to operate out of there. There's no way you're going to convince me that that business will not exist if you just don't dump the chips there and go somewhere else.
Okay, the reason it exists, Mr. Barkwell, is because the tree company itself is not entirely interested in the mushroom farm. What they are interested in is the fact that they can dump chips at the end of the day and it saves them money. If that's not viable because they're off the farm, they don't dump chips there. They find someplace else to dump them, and we cease to exist. It's a synergy.
You say that, but I can't argue with you on it.
Sorry, yeah, let's not get into a debate here. Any other questions for Mr. Clausen? Okay, thank you, Mr. Clausen. Council, any questions for Mr. Dulvit? Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through Brad. Sorry, Mr. Dulvit. So on the type 3, that's 2 employees on site. So if I was building cabinets or something on my farm, I'm allowed to have 2 employees on the farm. But in this situation, these people aren't on the farm. They leave, they come and they go for the day. Am I correct?
Through your worship to Councilor Van Elfen, I would actually disagree with that statement. I think the way I would interpret our zoning bylaw is that an employee is an employee is an employee. So whether it's a mobile food business that they're doing catering in other places of the community, whether it's a mobile mechanic that has employees that are doing, at home fixing of equipment at people's properties, that they're still considered an employee of that business operation. And the intent of that, of the home occupation regulations, and the reason why that 2 employee restriction is there is to signify that is the level we find acceptable within our bylaw as an accessory use to a residence. So it's not the same as an industrial zone property where it doesn't matter how many employees you have. It's like, no, this is the limit that there is for a home occupation that's accessory to that residential use on the property.
Thank you. Councillor Peak.
Well, I understand our constraints because of the part 3 or whatever. I'd like to make the observation that when we look at the opportunity for an agri-hub within our area, that there would be things that would happen there that would be different. If this property didn't have the Bartlett chips coming back to this area to be dumped off and parked, then they might be located elsewhere, and we would increase the carbon emissions for them to drive to the farm and drop those chips off. We would intensify the energies used, and there's less pollution because they're not traveling back and forth off-site. I believe that in consideration of some of the discussion that I've heard at this table and from outside this table today, that I would advise this to go to the application to the ALC. And if it comes back to us, then I would have the discussion about a temporary use permit.
Okay, Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Brad, so, and Mr. Dole, if an application like this was to proceed, what are the implications as you drive down Garnet Valley Road on other properties that could be in contravention of ALC bylaws and the district bylaws? I guess my question to you is this a floodgate that could be opened? Or are we going to take a more progressive stance in enforcing our bylaw when it comes to non-approved uses on agricultural property?
Your Worship, Councillor Patton. I do feel like that we are improving our service level when it comes to bylaw enforcement. That's the reason why this application is before council tonight. It was through our enforcement efforts. This application does have the potential of creating a bit of a precedence of what can be considered on other agricultural land by council. Every application that comes before council has full discretion to either move forward with as a non-farm use as well as a temporary use permit. But I think the reason why the staff recommendation is what the recommendation is of non-support is because of potential concerns of other industrial business operations being allowed to occur on agricultural land. And the protection of the integrity of the ALR is paramount in our staff opinion.
Councillor Van Elfen, that's Barkwell.
So this came before us because of a complaint.
Yeah.
Right. So as Councillor Patton has stated, there's issues all throughout the community. 20 years old, 30 years old, no one's complained. So we do nothing about it. So, and then here we are today. We got a complaint, we got to follow up on it. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate why it's done that way because we only have so much stuff. But, you know, I got to look at what's, you know, I got to look at the whole picture too at this table and see what else is going on in the community. And, you know, unless somebody signs a complaint form, we don't follow up. So it's not like we've been, you know, out there protecting farmland by any means. Thank you. Just a statement.
The other way of looking at that though is that it kind of serves warning to those who aren't conforming that they could be brought to the table anytime. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, comment on that, please. No, sorry. It's a farm.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just share that, you know, as a member of a community council, we are an elected group of your neighbors and peers. And we are here to evaluate situations that go beyond black and white. And we have to try to make decisions for the common sense decisions for the best and betterment of our community, including farmers, business people, families, and individuals. And it is next to impossible to please everyone. And I just think that the opportunity to support really unique farming operations and successful businesses and support jobs in our community is very important. And that is a value that I hold near and dear when it comes to supporting small businesses, small successful businesses in our community who support our community organizations and other local businesses. You know, we need to show up for each other. And I think that that's just a really important place to stand.
Councillor Barkle.
Okay. Firstly, we've heard Councillor Van Elfen, my friend Councillor Van Elfen's comments about the futility of enforcing compliance. But if it's going to be more futile if we were to go along with this particular one. And the point though with that too is that, yes, there's lots of complaints, and then most cases, there's compliance. When people are asked to correct whatever is out of compliance because there's been a bylaw complaint, then you know, and it's they do what's necessary. In this case, years ago, he was asked to bring into compliance, and all he's done is brought in more trucks. And there was other things. You know, we have non-compliance with the accommodation for the students, and we have non-compliance with the accommodation. It just adds up to a bad picture. But also to Councillor Bett's point, and I'd say 90% of Mr. Clausen's presentation was about what a wonderful mushroom business it is. And nobody denies that. And that's not the issue. And Councillor Betts could do a great bakery in her place. And everybody says, well, they got great things and people come from all over to learn how to do her bakery. But now she's got 8 delivery trucks coming in and out of her place every day, and 5 employees, or 7 employees, 10 employees. And but we should let her continue to operate that bakery out of her garage and her farmland because it's so great, because it's such a good business, because it's so successful. We'll give them that exception. So what, do we give exceptions only to successful businesses and shut down the ones that are not successful or are not innovative or not progressive? Everybody's got to play by the same rules, regardless of how great the story is. And it's a wonderful story, but please, if you're going to do your wonderful business in Summerland, you've had a great chance to get it going without a lot of interference. So now move on to a business that follows the rules like every other similar sized businesses.
Oh, sorry, sir. If we could get somebody to put a motion on the table, I think we've reached that point. Councillor Betts.
I move that council authorize the Agricultural Land Commission application number 69652 to allow for a non-farm use operation of 505.84 meters squared at 18420 Garnet Valley Road to proceed to the Agricultural Land Commission for consideration.
Second, Councillor Peak. Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Dolvett, so if then the process, if this passes, then it goes to the LC. They decide yes or no. If they approve it, then it comes back to us.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Your Worship. Yes, it would come back. I think it would be important for me to advise council that if you're not prepared to approve a temporary use permit in the future, I wouldn't approve the ALC authorization today because it would be unfair on the applicant to go through a full year process with the ALC, most likely going through that process for it to come back and it be denied in the future. So I think just it would be required for a temporary use permit to be brought back for council for a period of requested by the applicant, I assume 3 years based on the discussion. If council was willing to support that temporary use permit, then this would be an option.
Thank you. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. When you look at the documentation that was submitted in our package alone, there was well over 100 in support. And I can see that Bartlett Trees is a part of the mushroom farm. And I would support coming back as a temporary use. But I think that that's exactly what we have to view it as is a temporary use. And perhaps not for 3 years. Maybe we give, we can't just close the door on Bartlett Trees and say, what, council said, no, you're out of here tomorrow. It's a very successful business. It's going to take some time to look for a space, a commercial space to park the trucks. It's going to take some time to do this. So I feel that I could support going forward with a TUP, but I would compromise on a shorter period of time to allow the company to get in order what they have to do to research another place to park.
Councillor Betts and Marco.
And thank you for that point, Councillor Patton. But I think in considering this application and in considering moving it forward to the ALC to review for a second time, that council, in considering a temporary use permit, is trying to give certainty to a business to continue as is. And that's somewhat this discussion. So I would just secondly like to note that along with the letters of support, more than 100 letters of support that we received in our council package, there was also the unanimous support by the Agricultural Advisory Committee and the Garnet Valley Agritourism Association of the Bartlett Tree Experts business and what the fungus continuing at that location moving forward. And so for me, that stands as a compelling argument.
Councillor Barco.
So there's a lot of gray areas. We know there's lots of people that have an excavator on their property and they use it on their property and maybe they use it someplace here and there by local people. But this operation has moved beyond the gray area where he lived as he developed and grew into a international company that leases land from him to operate their business. You know, it's the mushroom business is great, but the tree business is not as entwined as with the mushroom business as maybe it's suggested. He's trained 300 people to do mushroom businesses without having a Bartlett Tree Company parked in the yard. I don't know exactly how much substrate they use, but I should have asked that question, how many dump trucks? But all that being said, I'd go along with Councillor Patton's suggestion. Let them bring things into a line, consider a shorter TUP if it does come back, and then get things in order, because the community's looking at this and the community's saying, what the heck? Are you guys going to allow them to do this? Because I'll rent my property for $30,000 a year to another tree company that I was talking to recently. So that gives them a chance to work on it. And I'll go along with that suggestion, Councillor Pattons.
Councillor Peak.
I already indicated that I would both want this application to go to the Agricultural Land Commission, and I would consider it coming back for temporary use permit. And at that time, we would have that discussion.
Yeah, we have the discussion at that time. Anyone else? For what it's worth, I struggle with this. I think it comes down to it is contrary to our bylaw. It's not a home occupation business. No matter how you look at it, it's not a home occupation business. And a temporary use permit, you'd be giving a temporary use permit for a business that's not temporary. It's not for temporary use. So I really struggle supporting the motion. But I'll call the question. All in favor? And I'm the only one opposed. Motion carries. Bylaws for adoption. Zoning amendment. This is for the King Street property that we read last council meeting. So it's just for adoption. Councillor Van Elfen. Second. Councillor Patton, all in favor? And that carries. Business arising, corporate officer.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. It's March 19th, 2024, closed session of council. Council passed the following resolution that council approve a .4 communications position, and further that council direct staff to amend the budget to include $13,560 allocated from the accumulated surplus for the 2024 fiscal year to support this position. This closed in-camera meeting decision can be released as it's no longer considered sensitive, and staff are asking for this report to be received for information to proceed with the next steps of the process.
Okay, thank you. So we just have a motion to receive. Yeah, okay. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Peak. Anybody want to discuss this? We already did, I guess. All in favor? That carries. Councillor reports. Anybody have anything to report? No? White bunch all of a sudden. Public comment period. Any members of the public would like to come and speak? State your name and civic address, push the button. You have 2 minutes, please.
My name is Jennifer Peters, and I am a property owner out in Garnet Valley. I'm also a business owner here in Summerland. I love our little community, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents across the line. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of friction within this house, within the district of Summerland, and throughout our community. It's been very apparent. My biggest thing is it's been very taxing on the people of Summerland with regards to disputes and with regards to the city being able to operate and everyone to be able to do their jobs uninterrupted. Basically, I feel like a lot of people are just acting like big children, and we all need to do our jobs and do them better. Okay, so, and that's with regards to the RCMP, with the city and district of Summerland, and with all of our community members. I am not anyone in anyone's posse. That is very rude. I'm here on my own accord because I care about our little town and the feeling of not feeling safe in a community, not being listened to or heard by council members because everybody's afraid, being harassed, and not having our RCMP listen to the citizens of our town. These are all really pressing conditions, and we all need to do better, all of us. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak? Come up.
Mary Ann McDonald, 6505 McDonald Place. I'm talking about something entirely different. I have a letter with me from the District of Summerland dated May 28th, 1999, concerning the annual sewer parcel tax, stating there would be an annual parcel tax of $200 a year for a period of 25 years, which was to be used to pay for the capital cost of the sewer system. That time is up. According to your letter dated April 4th, 2024, that debt is now retired, and I assume the plant is paid for. Direct quote, for many years, the district has collected a $200 parcel tax to help pay for the operation and maintenance of the sanitary sewer system, including sewer mains, manhole services connections, and the sewer treatment plant, as well as asset replacement. That was not the original intent based on the 1999 letter. I began paying $20 a month that same year for maintenance fees. Since 2009, this figure has nearly doubled, and I'm currently paying $36.72 a month, or $446 yearly in these fees, as well as the $200 sewer parcel tax. March 19th, 2024, a bylaw was adopted to continue collecting $200 annually for another 4 years. Not only is the letter poorly worded, but the intent of the additional parcel tax is rather vague. It appears to me that both charges are now for maintenance. And if, as stated, council is faced with an operating deficit to this facility, how did this come about? Something is just not adding up here. And on one other note, since I have 20 seconds, I would say another bone of contention as far as agricultural land is the piece of property that is next to the cemetery that is not being farmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Council. Brad Besler. I want to speak about Council's hypocrisy when it comes to the new decorum policy. One thing, Mayor Holmes, you made a big deal about was referring to councillors as Councillor so-and-so and not by their first name. But I've repeatedly heard councillors referring to each other by their first name during council meetings, including the deputy mayor. So maybe it's time council starts taking its own advice. And also, a serious lack of decorum has recently been shown by Councillor Peak. During the budget open house, when I questioned how the new garbage policy would reduce garbage collection but increase costs, Janet Peak was loudly scoffing and making noises with her friends during my comments. And at the last council meeting, when I asked the mayor to produce documents to show Summerland residents if Graham Stat is lying about his private pharmaceutical consulting, Janet Peak loudly said, no, no, during my comments.
I'm sorry. You can't continuously do these personal attacks. You come here every council meeting and launch personal attacks on people. Enough.
Respectfully, all I'm doing is stating facts.
Yeah. You. So speak to the issues, speak to your concerns, but let's just not make personal attacks. Is it really that difficult not to personalize everything?
You got a decorum policy on your wall. You were the one that spearheaded it. We have a counselor being rude and interrupting me. Imagine if I did that when you were talking. You know me, I sit quietly for 2-3 hours during these council meetings for the opportunity to address important issues. And now you're saying I'm being rude when actually the counselor's interrupting me because I'm a concerned citizen? Like, where's your credibility at? Why is that even on the wall? So a resident, if a counselor's being rude, just shut up and eat shit, right? That's what the message you're sending?
Okay, thanks for your comments. Anybody else have a comment, please? Come to the podium, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Byron Dolan. I'm at 10915 Ward Street. It was just more of a comment about the upcoming design for the Memorial Park renewal. I'm not sure what the plan was, but we noticed that the bike infrastructure has been removed from the plan. And we wanted to say to council, especially with the upcoming closure of Giants Head and with everyone moving to the Summerland Middle School, and as part of the safe routes to school work, it may be useful to look at how important that bike lane is as part of a safe route to school, especially from the current catchment area for Giants Head.
Thank you. Anybody else? And if I get a motion to adjourn, please, Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Trainer, all in favor, that carries.